Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming, and my name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Warhammer 40K Darktide, which is a game that came out a while ago. It might have even come out beginning of the year or end of last year, I can't remember, and it's a game that me and my friends wanted to play at some point, and we finally got around to playing it, and I've put 30 hours into it now already. So what is it? It's very much a horde-based, mission-based style game. So what I mean by that is if you've ever played Left 4 Dead, if you've ever played Fat Shark's previous game, Vermintide, Back 4 Blood, like games like that basically that involve you picking a character and essentially getting weapons and shooting masses, or in this case stabbing masses of enemies while completing missions. So they're very much about, you know, leveling up, going to do harder missions, getting better resources, upgrading your gear, all that good stuff. So you know, you kind of, if you know what I'm talking about, like a Left 4 Dead style game, you know what this game's like. So we've played, like I said, I played about 30 hours of it. Now I've primarily played one of the classes. I have played I've played two classes in total. There are four. The four classes in this game are the Ogrin, which is like a oversized, like it's like a mini ogre, I guess, much bigger than a human, big beefy tanky boy. You have the Zealot, which is a melee focus. Doesn't have to be melee focused, but is kind of like, has a lot of. Well, no, I guess the Zealot actually has quite a mix of stuff, but I see it as like a melee focused class for the most part. But you do have a mixture of guns and weapons. You have the Psyker, which is essentially a mage in any other game, has powers that they can use. And then you have the Veteran, who is a sharpshooter, I believe, and they are focused on ranged damage. But I have only really played the Ogrin, and I have started to play the Zealot, because those two classes are the one that I see sort of, more focused on melee primarily, or at least that's how I would play them. They do have options to play it ranged, which is great, and that's what makes this game have quite a lot of variety in its builds. But the four classes are very different. They do have, there are certain weapons that are locked to each class, and there are some weapons that are across the board, unless you're playing the Ogrin, in which case you pretty much have your own weapon sets. You'll have similar things, but because he's a bigger boy, he has bigger weapons and things like that, so they have to fit that model basically. But yeah, it is the classes themselves. You obviously pick the one you want to play. You have a talent tree for the class. You have your weapons, and you can upgrade your weapons. You can get extra perks, extra blessings on them that will give you bonuses to whatever that weapon's doing, and things that can help you in battle. Because the game is quite tough. Like, you can play on level 1, the very easy difficulty, and you'll have a fairly straightforward time. You won't get too many specialists or crazy enemies or anything like that. Unless you're like unlucky like we did, and we got like some crazy. The very first time we did it, we had a crazy big boy just appear and just murder us all. But level 2 is probably what I would call the standard difficulty. It's fairly tough if you're new to the game. 3 and upwards. 3 gets much more difficult, a lot more specialist things like that. You also have modifiers on missions. But yeah, the basic gist is you go out on a mission. There are different types of missions. There's raids, strikes, assassination, espionage. I think there's 7 in total. Repair is one of them. And you go out and you do the objective, and you go through these big maps, fighting off hordes of enemies, trying to make sure you don't die. And you rinse and repeat basically. You do a bunch of the missions. There is some story involved, but it's like every so many missions you'll get like a cutscene or something, and it will unlock something else. But that's the game in a nutshell. Is basically that's the gameplay loop. Go out on a mission, try not to die, level up, spend your talent points, get new weapons and gear, or upgrade your weapons and gear, and go back out in the field. And when you get to a point where you think, oh, this is a bit too easy, whack it up a difficulty, and then rinse and repeat like that basically. But you know, let's break down the individual parts about the game, what I actually like about this game, and then what I don't like. So we've talked about the classes. I can't speak about the Psyker and the Veteran, but from what the others have been saying, it sounds like the Psyker is pretty nuts, and the Veteran is kind of like I said, focused on guns and stuff, so I haven't really played that, but it sounds like all the classes across the board are good. The Ogrin, which is the one that I've primarily played, is a lot of fun. I've played him as a very tanky, can absorb a lot of damage, can stun enemy kind of thing, and that's his whole role. I've not gone for like damage build, I've gone for like very much I'll attract the enemies and stay in the fight and wail on people while other people are doing objectives, or I'll block a path, or because I have an ability that lets me run and knock everybody on the floor, so I'm kind of like crowd control with some things. Like I've got this huge double linked minigun thing basically, which is pretty great, and that can just mow down enemies. And then while I'm doing that, everybody else, you know, if you've got like the sharpshooters or like the veteran doing that and the psycho spawning magic, they're behind me, I'm protecting them, I'm just tanking the damage, and I built my ogre around that. But you can do it like more about guns, you can have more about melee damage. I just kind of went for like, hey, I'm just going to soak damage, that's going to be my thing. And that's kind of what he's good for. And then the Zealot, which I'm also playing, I'm going for a melee damage build. So the Zealot has basically each tree, by the looks of it, has 3 different paths that you can go down. And with my Zealot, it's like, oh, damage, melee, basically. But you also have stuff with like reload speed, you can have movement speed and stuff with him. And sort of every so often down the tree you unlock different things. You have like an aura that's like a passive for everybody, you have a grenade, or if you're the psycho you have magical abilities, you have keystone abilities, which are the very bottom ones that are usually pretty powerful. So you when you look at the tree, you have to kind of like map out where you want to go, and you can mix and match stuff. Like there's no wrong answer, but if you are going for like a specific type of build, it's good to kind of go, okay, I'm going to go down this side of the tree and maybe I cut across here. And that's a lot of fun. And I would say that so far the 2 classes I've played, the Ogre and the Zealot, are a lot of fun, and they just got to play to like my style. Like, okay, I want to get in there with a melee weapon. Yeah, the guns are great, don't get me wrong, having the guns, they're super awesome, but it feels really satisfying like smacking somebody with like a mallet, or like, you know, if you're the Ogre and you've got massive knives which are called cleavers, you've got a shield that you can use, you can bash people with that, you've got a massive shovel, you've got clubs, and if you play as the Zealot, you get a chain sword, you get a thunder hammer, you get chain axes, and the chain sword's awesome because you can rev it up and then slam it into somebody and it will like, cut through them and things. And there's just a ton of variety in terms of gameplay and weapons, because even if you get swords, you get like normal swords in this, but they could be different variants of the same sword. So you might be like, oh, here's the Mark 1, here's the Mark 2, what's the difference? Oh, this one's got a different special ability. So if you take the Mark 2, you'll always have this extra attack, whereas if you take the Mark 1, you can always parry, for example, or something. Things along that line. Like you get the big stubby machine guns that you get with the Ogre, sometimes they're really fast firing but not very much damage, but they're really good at like staggering. Or you get the heavy damage ones, but they're not as fast firing. So there's always these like trade-offs that you're trying to make depending on what kind of build. But yeah, like when you get into the game, you have your melee weapon, you have your ranged weapon. Each thing usually has 3 abilities. So for me, it'll be, I'm playing on PC, so it's left click, right click, and then an extra button to do my third attack. So if I'm using the knife with the Ogre, you keep clicking to do a light attack, you hold it to do a heavy attack. Right click blocks with the knife, and then my extra button, he'll punch somebody to like sort of knock them back, and then you can stab them and things like that. Same with the guns, I usually have like an extra ability, like one might be like fire normally, fire down sights, and then you might be able to hit somebody with it. If you've got the grenade launcher, you can like fire normally, aim fire, and then I can't remember what the third ability is on it, but everything has 3 buttons for each gun, which again brings more variety and allows for the gameplay to be like that. You get into a mission, you've got the ability to dodge in this game, so you have options. So you can, if you're playing melee specifically, you can dodge, you can parry with some weapons, and it kind of is, the game sort of opens up once you start to understand how the game plays and what's in it in terms of like your abilities. And once you start to get different upgrades and things like that, you can really like, you kind of get into a flow of things. Like with the Zealot that I'm playing, I'm specifically doing a lot more dodging, like dodging back and holding down like the heavy attack button, so when I dodge back the enemy comes in range, slam, there goes a chainsword into their head. And enemy types is another thing that's really cool about this game. We'll get to those in a minute. I need to talk about one thing at a time. But yeah, so you can dodge around, you've got your melee attacks, you can dodge with the gun as well, which is really cool, so you can like dodge backwards and fire. Dodging's good because you can avoid some of the bigger hits. The game does a really nice job of also warning you when you're about to get hit from a different side. You get this weird like noise, and that basically means you're about to get hit. So you can like turn and block and hopefully guess right and protect your attacks. But yeah, at your disposal you have your weapons, you have your dodge, you have reliquaries that give you extra buffs later on. All in all, this is your standard kind of kit out your character and go on a mission and deal with it. Let's talk about enemy types, because that really does mix up the gameplay. So not only do you have the 4 different classes, you have the tons of different weapons to choose from. Every time you go on a mission, you're going to run into different types of enemies. Some enemies more than others. Higher difficulties gives you harder enemies to deal with. So you might have a lot of the squishy enemies. When you get a horde of enemies, a lot of the time it's squishy, and you're just absolutely hacking them down. In this game, you can hack off people's heads. Like, if you aim perfectly, you can take someone's head off if you do enough damage. You can take people's limbs off. You can shoot their bodies clean off with a shotgun. You can take their legs out and their arms out. Like, it's super cool. But yeah, the enemy types are what really make this game interesting. So you have your normal sort of standard enemies. And your standard enemies, for the most part, like, some do have guns. Most of them are melee. Some will have types of armor. You have flak armor and carapace armor. I think that's correct. But basically, some are better at defending bullet shots, and some are better deflecting melee attacks. So you have to learn that. And there's so you have your basic enemies, and there's different types of those. And then you have your specialists. And the specialists are the ones that really, if you played Left 4 Dead or a game like that, where you're like, oh, here's the boomer, here's the smoker, here's like all these different things that turn up to mess with the battlefield. Though same sort of principle here. So in this game, you'll have a scav gunner, which will suppress you and stop you moving very far, and if you don't get out of the way, your toughness, which is basically a shield, and your health will just get incinerated. You've got shotgunners that will knock you backwards. My absolute like the one that I have struggled with the most is the trapper. It will turn up to you and just fire a net, and then you're stuck on the floor until somebody rescues you. They are a nightmare to try and dodge. I don't know why I have such trouble with them. You have flamers, you have grenade throwers or bombers, you've got ones that explode. Some of my favourites are the rages and the maulers. Now the rages, basically two-handed weapon guys. They run up to you, keep attacking. You have to kind of block and push them away, get a couple of attacks in and block again, or like shoot them, or whatever you've got to do, because they're very relentless. That's the whole point of them. If you don't deal with them, they will just absolutely destroy you. And then you've got the maulers, which are two-handed weapon wielders that essentially are covered in armor, and they are a nightmare to kill. They take a ton of damage, but they're a lot of fun to fight. And I find that some of their more melee intensive enemies are the most fun to fight, because you're doing this dance with them. You're like, well, if I'm playing the Ogren, I can usually stun someone relatively easily, so I can just stand there and wail on them. But then while I'm playing the Zealot, because I don't have as much stun on whatever weapons, because I've only started playing that class, I have to get in, get a few hits, dodge out, dodge to the left and the right, block, push, follow up attack like that. It makes me think, and I actually really appreciate the fact that the enemy variety is so big. You've got other enemy types as well, the ones I haven't mentioned. You've then got like demonic things. So like on some levels, sometimes the music will change and like a demonic mini boss will turn up, and it could be like a big ogre, it could be a demon spawn, it could be the beast of Nurgle. There's demon heads as well, demon hosts, which are, you'd never want to attack those. Like like I said, there's a lot of variety. Snipers as well, they're an absolute pain in the ass. But it's what all of this combined, the variety of the class, the variety of the enemies, the weapons, everything that goes together makes this game, one want to play it over and over and over. To be honest, I've done most of the missions multiple times, and sometimes there are missions where I'm just like, ugh, not this one again. But, that's something that Fat Shark can hopefully add in as time goes on, is more missions in those types. Like I said, there's like raids and strikes. So like you might have a mission where you have to run into the archives and scan for information, print that information out and get out. You've got ones where you have to take down bosses, which are assassination missions. You've got ones where you have to like defend an area, scan areas. There's like sort out a water system. There's like a ton of different variety there. It's just some of the maps get reused, so you'll find that you're going through certain areas backwards, or you're going through the map, you're like, hang on a minute, and you realise you're in the same area, but you're going off in a different direction. I kind of get what they did. It kind of make it feel like this big hive city. And to be honest, we'll get on to visuals in a minute, but like the game does look pretty cool in terms of being 40k lore and stuff, so I get like that. So all of these things combined do make a very compelling game. Honestly, like, I didn't like Vermintide too much. Like, I didn't mind it, but I got bored of it very quickly, whereas this, like, I'm still enjoying it. I've got all the classes to play, got a ton of things to unlock, and obviously I'm playing me recording this video is not too long after their newest patch came out, which basically reworked all of the classes, which meant that essentially the skill trees and stuff were different. I have no idea what this game was like beforehand because I never played it until now, so I can only speak of what the game's like now. But all in all, like, just having an absolute blast with it. Like I said, visuals, very, very nice looking game. I'm playing it on the lowest settings for the most part because this game is quite intensive with a lot of enemies running on screen. But even then, it still looks pretty good. Mostly runs at a decent frame rate. Occasionally I do get a few times when it will drop, but there's a lot of enemies on screen. But as a package, right now, I'm very much enjoying my time with it. That might be because I've got people to play with. You can't play this game solo. You can play it with at least one other person in a strike team with bots if you don't want to play games with randos, which is, you know, for the most part pretty good. It would be good if you could play it on your own with bots, but I can understand that's something that's meant to be coming down the line later on. There is a couple of bad things though, and I think I should bring these up. I keep getting weird visual glitches, and I'm not the only one out of the group that this keeps happening to, but visual glitches of like these black squares appearing in certain parts of the missions. And it's not to the point where it's that much of a detrimental to the game, but it is annoying because it happens like at least once every mission. I'm not sure what happened in that. The biggest problem I've had with the game is getting stuck on objects sometimes. Like, sometimes not, like, my dude won't walk up a ladder properly, or like he'll get stuck on a ladder, or he won't go up a stairs properly. And again, it's not the end of the world, but it happens enough to the point where I'm like, this is a little bit annoying. And the only other thing with this game is you'll find on higher difficulties, some of the combinations of specialists are just brutal, and if you get caught without, you know, you just turn around and you happen to get trapped and somebody's flamethrowing you, you're pretty much, unless someone's there to deal with it, you're pretty much dead, because like we had one where there was 3 trappers and a grenadier and an ogre and minigunner or whatever, and it was just like, well, we're dead because 2 of us got trapped or 3 of us got trapped or whatever happened, and it was just like, this is a bit nuts. But I think that's probably part of the thing of playing games on higher difficulties. You're gonna have to deal with what gets thrown at you, so that's more of a personal gripe, I guess, but I'm still enjoying it. You know, all in all, I think it's a very good game. I think a lot of people, if you've not played, or you're looking for something to play that's like team-based and wave-based, then I would absolutely recommend this. This is a lot of fun. I can't speak for the other 2 classes, but only from what people have told me that they seem to be a lot of fun as well. And yeah, just a really, really solid game. Hopefully you're watching, there's footage on the stream while I'm talking, which will hopefully back all this up. And if you're interested in what you see, then definitely go check out the game. And that's my thoughts on it, really. Like, I'm enjoying playing the game. You know, at some point, I think once I've done all the classes, I'll probably be done with it for a while. But until then, like, I'm kind of enjoying working through it. I'd like to try some of the harder missions soonish, like the really hard stuff. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Warhammer 40K Darktide. So thank you very much for watching the video as always. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description. And until next video, I will see you then.